I have sewn lies into every dress I have ever made. 8 years of smiling, nodding, pretending the howls at night meant nothing to me. My name is Sable. I am 22 years old, and I am not who anyone thinks I am. My hair is black, straight, cut just above my shoulders because long hair gets caught in the loom. My eyes are dark brown, almost black, the kind that people say are hard to read. Good. I need them to be. I wear simple clothes, a gray wool dress, a leather apron stained with dye, cotton sleeves rolled to my elbows. I look like every other seamstress in Ashenmoor. That is the point. But there is a scar, thin, pale, running across my left collarbone like a thread of moonlight on skin. I tell people it was a scissors accident when I was young. They believe me because they want to. The truth is far stranger. That scar pulses on nights when the moon is full. It glows faint silver when I am alone in my room with the shutters closed. It is the mark of the Luna, the spiritual voice of the pack. And the pack lives right beneath the feet of every person in this city who wants them dead. Ashenmoor is a walled city built on old stone. High gray walls, iron gates, cobblestone streets winding between narrow buildings stacked 3 stories high. There is a main square with a stone platform at the center. They call it the Judgment Stage. Twice in my lifetime, they dragged people onto that stage for conspiring with wolves. I watched both times from the crowd, face blank, heart screaming. This city hates wolves the way a drowning man hates the sea. Anyone found aiding or communicating with wolves is sentenced to exile beyond the walls. In winter, exile means death. And I am the Luna of the very pack they despise. I was not born in Ashenmoor. The pack found me as a baby, abandoned at the base of the eastern wall during a snowstorm. They carried me underground, into the tunnels and caverns that run beneath the city like veins under skin. A white wolf named Mara nursed me alongside her own pups. She was enormous, fur like fresh snow, pale gray eyes that held a warmth I have never found in any human gaze since. Mara died when I was 11. I still dream about her. The weight of her body curled around mine, the rumble of her breathing. When I was 14, the pack alpha, Old Varek, made a decision. Massive, battle-scarred, one ear torn, muzzle streaked silver from age. He said the pack needed eyes inside the city. I was the only one who could do it. I looked human, spoke human language, and carried the Luna mark. So I climbed out of the tunnels on a spring morning and walked through the eastern gate with a rehearsed story. Orphan, wanderer, looking for work. That was 8 years ago. I built a life stitch by stitch, apprenticed with old Marta, a seamstress with crooked fingers and a kind heart. 60 when I met her, small, hunched, wiry gray hair pinned with bone needles. When she died 3 years later, she left me the shop on a narrow street near the south wall. Next door is the forge, and in the forge works Dane. Dine is 26, broad-shouldered, with arms roped in muscle from years of hammering iron. His skin is tan, darkened further by soot and heat. His hair is brown, always messy, perpetually damp with sweat. He has a crooked nose from a bar fight he claims he did not start, and a laugh that comes easy and fills a room. He is the kind of man who fixes things without being asked. A broken hinge on my door. A bent needle he straightened with pliers so small they looked ridiculous in his hands. I should not have let him get close. But loneliness is a wolf of its own, and it hunts you in ways you do not expect. We started talking through the shared wall. His forge is loud during the day, but in the evenings he would knock twice. 2 knocks meant, "Are you still there?" I would knock back once. Yes. That ritual grew into words through the window. Then tea on my doorstep. Then walks along the south wall at dusk. He never asked why I sometimes disappeared at night. His patience felt like a gift I did not deserve. Because every 7th night, I slip through a grate behind the tanner's shop and descend into the tunnels. The air below is cool, smelling of stone and something wild. The corridors were carved centuries ago, lined with pale roots that glow faintly in the dark. The pack lives in the deepest chamber, a cavern the size of the main square above. A shallow underground river cuts through the center, and there, scattered across the stone floor, are the wolves, 43 of them, white fur, amber eyes. Ren is the young alpha now. Varric passed 2 winters ago, and Ren took his place. He is not as large as Varric was, but he is faster, sharper, more restless. His fur is pure white, unmarked by scars, and his eyes burn amber with an intensity that makes you feel examined rather than seen. He is my age in wolf years, and we grew up together in the tunnels. He was one of Mara's pups. In some ways, he is the closest thing I have to a brother. But lately, Ren watches me differently. Not with warmth, with suspicion. Last moon, when I descended into the cavern, he was waiting at the tunnel entrance, standing still, ears forward, tail low. He did not greet me the way he used to. No press of his nose to my hand, no low rumble of welcome. "You smell like iron," he said, not in words. Wolves do not speak the way humans do. It comes as impressions, images, feelings pushed into your mind like ink dropped into water. Iron meant the forge. The forge meant Dane. I told him it was nothing, just proximity. My shop is next to a forge. He stared at me for a long time, then turned and walked into the cavern without responding. That silence said more than any accusation could. I understood his fear. The pack's survival depends on secrecy. If I formed bonds with humans, if someone got close enough to notice my disappearances, my strange scar, the way I tilt my head to listen to sounds no one else hears, everything would unravel, and the pack would pay the price. But then came the announcement that changed everything. It was a gray morning when the city bells rang 3 times. 3 bells means the council speaks. Everyone gathered in the main square. The 5 council members stood on the judgment stage in black wool and iron chains of office. Halvard, the chief counselor, stood at the center. 50 years old, tall, thin as a blade, silver hair combed tight, pale blue eyes that never blinked. "The tunnels beneath Ashenmoor are a threat," he said. "We have confirmed wolf dens below our streets. The council has authorized the Great Purge. Every tunnel entrance will be sealed within 30 days. The crowd murmured. Some cheered. I stood perfectly still, my hands gripping the edge of my apron so hard my knuckles went white. 30 days. The pack had 30 days before their home became a tomb. That night, I did not wait for the 7th day. I went down immediately, sliding through the grate into the darkness with my heart pounding so loud I was sure the sentries could hear it from above. The pack was already agitated. The scouts had heard the bells, felt the vibrations of the crowd above. They knew something had shifted. I told Ren everything. He listened without moving, his amber eyes locked on mine. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said something that cut deeper than any blade. Maybe this is what happens when a Luna forgets which side of the wall she belongs on. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him that I had given up everything for the pack. My childhood, my identity. 8 years of lying, of sleeping with one ear pressed to the floor listening for footsteps that might be soldiers, of biting my tongue every time someone in the market laughed about wolf pelts. But I said nothing. Because part of me wondered if he was right. The next days blurred together. I sewed during the day while my mind raced. At night, I mapped tunnel entrances. There were 7 total. If even one remained unsealed, the pack could survive. But the council hired surveyors with instruments and iron rods. One by one, the entrances were found. Dane noticed something was wrong. Of course he did. He knew my rhythms better than anyone. He came to my shop one evening, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, sawdust still in his hair. "You have not slept," he said. "Your stitches are uneven. You never make uneven stitches." I almost laughed. Of all the things to notice, I told him I was worried about the purge. that sealing the tunnels might weaken the foundations. It was a lie wrapped around a truth, which is the kind I have gotten best at telling. He studied me for a moment. Then he said something unexpected. My grandfather used to say the wolves kept the rats out of the tunnels, that before the walls went up, people and wolves shared this valley. He paused. I do not think everything the council says is true, Sable. I held his gaze and felt something crack inside my chest. Not the crack of breaking, the crack of something trying to open. On the 20th day, the surveyors found the passage behind the temple. That left only 2 entrances the pack could use. I went down that night and found the cavern half empty. Ren had already begun moving the pack deeper into older tunnels that ran beneath the river. The air was colder there, the passages narrower. Not ideal for 43 wolves, but better than being sealed in. Ren met me at the junction between the old cavern and the deeper tunnels. He looked tired. His fur had lost some of its brightness, and his movements were slower than usual. The pups are frightened, he said. The elders cannot move fast. We need more time. I know, I told him. I am working on it. He looked at me for a long time. Then, softly, a feeling rather than words, he pushed an image into my mind. It was me, but not as I am now. It was me as a child, curled against Mara's belly, sleeping peacefully while the pack breathed around me. Safe. Whole. Home. Do not forget, he said. This is who you are. I climbed back to the surface with tears freezing on my cheeks. On the 25th day, I made my decision. It was not brave. It was desperate. But desperation and courage looked the same from the outside. I went to see Halvard. The council hall sits at the top of the city, stone walls, arched windows, iron doors. Halvard received me behind a massive oak desk, watching me approach with the mild interest of a cat observing a mouse. I told him I had explored the tunnels as a girl, that I had seen structural supports, ancient stonework holding up the foundations of entire city blocks. Sealing the tunnels without understanding the architecture could cause collapses, sinkholes, entire streets caving in. It was a half-truth. The tunnels did support some structures, but the danger was not as severe as I made it sound. I needed him to hesitate. Halvard listened without interrupting. Then he said, "You have been in the tunnels. That alone is punishable." My blood went cold, but I held my ground. I was a child when it happened, reporting out of civic duty. He dismissed me without an answer. I walked back with my legs shaking so badly I stopped twice to lean against walls. 2 days later, the purge was paused. Halvard announced a structural assessment before any further sealing. It would take at least 2 weeks. I had bought time, but I had also put myself on Halvard's map, and that was a dangerous place to be. Dane was waiting on my doorstep when I got back from the square. He had heard about my visit to the council hall. In a city this size, nothing stays secret for long. The irony was not lost on me. "Why did you go to Halvard?" he asked. His voice was careful, but his eyes were worried. I told him the same story about foundations and structural risk. He listened, then shook his head slowly. "That is not it," he said. "I have known you for 5 years, Sable. You are afraid of something, and it is not sinkholes." He was right. And standing there, looking at the only person in this city who had ever made me feel something close to belonging, I almost told him everything. The words were right there, pressing against my teeth like wolves pressing against a gate. But I swallowed them. I told him I was fine. He did not believe me, but he nodded, squeezed my hand once, and went back to his forge. The assessment bought time, but brought attention. Halvard sent 2 surveyors to walk the tunnels with me as guide. I led them through the upper sections only, showing support columns and stress points. They took notes. They never went deep enough to find the pack. But on the 3rd day, a wiry surveyor named Gresk, with sharp eyes, knelt and picked something from the ground. "White fur," he said. "Fresh." My stomach dropped. I told him rats sometimes carried debris. He looked at me like he did not believe a word of it. That night, I went to Ren. "The pack needs to move," I said. "Now. All the way out. Through the eastern tunnels. Beyond the wall. Into the forest." Ren bristled. "The forest is open ground. No shelter, no defense. The hunters patrol those woods." "I know," I said. "But staying here is death. They are finding traces. It is only a matter of time." He paced the cavern, his claws clicking on wet stone. The pups watched him with wide amber eyes. The elders lay still, conserving energy, their white fur tinged yellow in the dim light. "There is another way," Ren said finally. He stopped pacing and looked at me. "You could tell them who you are." I stared at him. "You said I was forgetting which side I belong on. Now you want me to reveal myself. I want you to stop pretending there are two sides," he said. "You are the Luna. You are the bridge. That is what the mark means. Not hiding, not choosing, connecting." His words hit me like cold water, because he was right. For 8 years, I had lived in the space between two worlds, belonging fully to neither. I had told myself it was duty, that I was serving the pack by staying hidden, but hiding had become habit, and habit had become identity. I did not know how to be anything other than a secret. The next morning, I did the most terrifying thing I have ever done. I went to Dane's forge before dawn. He was already awake, feeding the coals, his face lit orange in the glow. When he saw my expression, he set down the bellows and said nothing, just waited. "I need to show you something," I said. "And after I show you, you might never look at me the same way again." He followed me without a single question, through the pre-dawn streets, past the tanner's shop, to the grate in the ground. I pulled it open. The smell of earth and stone rose up like breath. We went down together. I led him through the tunnels in silence, our footsteps echoing off ancient walls. He ran his fingers along the carvings, the glowing roots, the stonework that predated the city above. His eyes were wide, but he was not afraid. Dain has never been afraid of things he does not understand, only of things that hurt the people he cares about. We reached the deep cavern, and there they were. 43 white wolves, amber eyes turning toward us in the dim light. Pups tumbling over each other near the river. Elders resting on stone ledges. Sentinels standing at the perimeter, hackles raised at the unfamiliar scent. Ren stepped forward. Massive, white, eyes blazing. He looked at Dane the way a king looks at an uninvited guest. Dane stopped walking. His breath caught. I watched his face cycle through shock, fear, wonder, and something I did not expect. Recognition. "My grandfather was right," he whispered. "They never left." I showed him my scar. Under the faint glow of the roots, it shimmered silver against my skin. I told him everything. The baby at the wall, Mara, the tunnels, the Luna mark. 8 years of deception. Every lie I had ever told him. Every knock on the wall that meant yes, I am still here, when what I really meant was I am still hiding. He was quiet for a long time. Then he looked at me with those warm brown eyes and said, "Your stitches were never uneven because of sleeplessness. They were uneven because you were scared." I almost broke right there. But there was no time for breaking. The structural assessment would end in days. Halvard would resume the purge, and Gresk had found white fur in the tunnels. Dain helped me plan. His mind worked differently from mine, practical where I was emotional, direct where I was cautious. He suggested something I had never considered. Instead of running or hiding, we would invite people down. Not the council, not the soldiers. Regular people, shopkeepers, bakers, mothers. The people who lived above the tunnels every day without knowing what breathed beneath them. It was insane. It was also the only idea that had a chance. Over the next 3 days, I told 6 people. Marta the baker, who had known me since I arrived and always saved me the end pieces of bread, old Josek the carpenter, who remembered his grandmother's stories about wolves and humans sharing the valley, Tella the midwife, who had a practical streak wider than the city walls, and 3 others, people I had spent 8 years quietly judging as trustworthy. I brought them down one at a time. Each reaction was different. Marta cried. Josek laughed and said he always knew. Tella immediately started assessing the cavern for ventilation and hygiene, because that is who she is. But none of them ran. None of them screamed. And when the pups tumbled over to investigate these strange 2-legged creatures, something shifted in the air. Fear gave way to curiosity. Curiosity gave way to wonder. Ren watched all of this from his ledge above the cavern. He did not approach the humans, but he did not bare his teeth either. When I looked up at him, he sent me an image. It was the city and the tunnels, drawn together, the walls between them thin as paper, and a single figure standing in the middle, arms open. Me. On the 30th day, Halvard announced the purge would resume at dawn. That night, 31 residents of Ashenmoor walked into the main square carrying lanterns. I was at the front. Dane stood beside me, his hand not quite touching mine. Behind us came Marta, Josek, Tella, and the others, and behind them, people they had told, people who had gone down and seen for themselves. Halvard came out onto the judgment stage, flanked by guards. His pale eyes swept the crowd. I stepped forward. My voice shook, but it carried. I told them who I was. Not just a seamstress, not just an orphan. The Luna, the voice of the pack. A girl raised by wolves who had lived among humans for 8 years, sewing their clothes and mending their wounds and loving their city even when it hated what she was. The silence that followed was the loudest sound I have ever heard. Then Halvard spoke. He called me a traitor, a wolf sympathizer. He ordered the guards to take me. But Marta stepped forward. Then Josek. Then Tella. Then the others, one by one, forming a wall of bodies and lanterns between me and the guards. Not soldiers, not fighters. Just people who had seen the truth with their own eyes and decided it mattered more than fear. Halvard looked at the crowd. He looked at the guards, who shifted uncomfortably. He looked at me. And from the grate behind the tanner's shop, a sound rose. Low at first, then building. A howl. Then another. Then a chorus. 43 voices rising from beneath the city like a hymn from the earth itself. The wolves were singing. Not in threat, in answer. The purge was never completed. It took weeks of argument, votes, shouting matches in the council hall, and one very tense night where Ren stood in the main square under moonlight while half the city watched from their windows. But the tunnels were not sealed. An agreement was reached, fragile and imperfect, the kind that requires tending like a garden. The wolves stay below. The humans stay above. But the passages remain open. And once a month, on the full moon, anyone who wishes can descend and see the pack, understand them, learn to live beside them rather than above them. Halvard resigned from the council. Gresk stayed in Ashenmoor, fascinated by the tunnel architecture. He still gives me suspicious looks sometimes, but he brings dried meat for the pups when he thinks no one is watching. Dane and I do not knock on the wall anymore. There is a door between our shops now. One he built himself. Iron hinges, oak frame, no lock. Some nights we sit on my doorstep and listen to the faint sounds rising from below. The click of claws on stone, the murmur of the underground river, the soft breath of wolves sleeping in peace. Ren and I found our way back to each other, not as siblings exactly, and not as Alpha and Luna in the old formal way. Something new, something that does not have a word yet because it has never existed before. He comes to the surface sometimes now, in the early hours when the streets are empty. He walks beside me along the south wall, and we look out at the forest together. He sends me images of what the valley looked like before the walls, green and open and full of life. I send him images of what the city looks like from above. Smoke and stone and stubborn, complicated people learning to be less afraid. My scar still glows on full moon nights. I do not hide it anymore. I wear open collars now, and when the light catches that thin silver line, people stare. Some with fear, some with awe. Some with nothing more than mild curiosity, which is honestly my favorite reaction. Normal, unremarkable. As if a woman with a glowing scar and a wolf pack beneath her feet is just another part of life in Ashenmoor. I spent 8 years sewing lies into every dress I made, every stitch a secret, every hem a hidden truth. I thought that was the only way to survive, that the Luna had to be invisible to be safe. I was wrong. My name is Sable. I am the Luna, and now finally everyone knows.